Senator Penny Wong is the Shadow Foreign Affairs Minister. Senator, why is Labor attempting to blame this security deal on Scott Morrison? He's not responsible for the sovereign actions of the Chinese government or the Solomon Islands government.
Well, first, it's good to be with you, Leigh. It is true that the Solomon Islands is a sovereign nation, but that doesn't absolve Mr Morrison of his responsibility as Australia's leader. And the fact is, this is the worst foreign policy blunder that we've seen in the Pacific since World War II. And despite Mr Morrison's tough talk on his watch, our region has become less secure and the risks Australia faces have become greater.
If you see it as a failure of Scott Morrison's leadership, then logic dictates that you also must see it as a failure of US leadership in the region, given that the foundation of all security in the Pacific comes from the US.
The United States is the indispensable nation when it comes to security in our region and obviously in the world. But let's be clear, Australia has always had a particular role here in the Pacific. We have always been the country to whom Pacific Island nations looked as a partner of choice. We have been part of the Pacific community or the Pacific family. That has historically been our position. And what has occurred here on Mr Morrison's watch is that we are no longer the nation to whom the Solomon Islands looks to. Now, this is a failure of Australian foreign policy under this Prime Minister, a man who, as I said, talks tough but goes missing when it really counts, just like he did on bushfires and vaccines and rats.
It's not just about the Solomons, it's also about China. How would you attempt to reset the relationship with China if you became Australia's Foreign Minister?
Well, the first thing we have to do is recognise that our region is being reshaped in great part by the strategic competition between the US and China, and most relevantly by China's increased aggression and assertiveness. And how we deal with that is very important for Australia's security. And one of the key things we have to do is to secure our region. That is why what is occurring in Solomon Islands is such a failure of Australian foreign policy.
But practically,
under this
what would you do?
What I would say, first in relation to the Pacific, and we will have more to say about this, there are a whole range of things we wouldn't have done. We wouldn't have reduced development assistance, which on average, compared to when we were last in government for this region or for the Solomon Islands, is 28% less per year.
So would does that mean we'd expect to see that restored?
We wouldn't see. I'll come to that shortly. We'll have more to say. We wouldn't have mocked Pacific leaders by joking about water lapping at their doors, as Mr Dutton did with Mr Morrison standing next to him.
But let's not talk
we would
about
have been credible on climate.
Let's talk about what you will do.
But I'm happy to come to that. We would have been credible on climate, and we would not have mismanaged the Pacific Labour Scheme. So all of this adds up to a failure of diplomacy, a failure of strategy, and a failure of leadership. And there is a direct responsibility that Mr Morrison has not taken. Now, what I will say to you is, and we will have more to say on this during the campaign, what you should expect from us, if we are elected, is more resources and more energy and more focus on securing our region. There was a lot of focus from Mr Morrison on fighting Labor, fighting the domestic fight, when his focus really should be on making sure Australians are more secure in our region.
If you become Foreign Minister, what will be the first country you visit and why?
Look, that's probably the usual answer to that is Indonesia, but you'd have to say that the Pacific Island region would have to be very early on in a visit from an incoming Labor government.
Penny Wong, thanks for your time tonight.
Good to be with you.
Hi, I'm Leigh Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 7:30's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.